Right. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for our presentation today on building a graph dashboard. So using Kibi to explore interconnected data in Elasticsearch. By me, Sam Dooby, and I'm joined by Giovanni Tummarello from Siren Solutions, whose name I'll probably mispronounce several times throughout this presentation. So this is today's agenda. Over the next hour or so, I'll go into further introductions on myself and Giovanni, and then before Giovanni's main presentation, I'm just going to look at the elements of connected data behind his presentation. So we'll look at what is a dashboard, what is a graph that we want to include in these dashboards, and why we'd want to include these graphs on these dashboards. And then Giovanni will take all that and put it together and present on Kibi, which is developed by Siren Solutions, the graph dashboard for Elasticsearch. And following that, in about 30 minutes or so, we will have a Q&A session looking at some of the questions that have already been sent to us. And we'll also, if you have any questions that come up during the presentation that you can think of, please feel free to submit them through the Citrix panel on your screen, and we'll add those to the session. And just a reminder that this is being recorded, and we will send out a link to the session tomorrow for you. Just for some introductions, my name is Sam Dooby, and I'm the Technical Sales Manager for the Europe, Middle East, and Asia and Africa region. And I'm joined by Giovanni Tummarello, who is the CEO at Siren Solutions based in Ireland. Giovanni is an expert in data analytics and knowledge graphs, and at Siren Solutions they've been consulting on search engines and open source technologies for many years, with major contributions to Lucene, Solo, and Elasticsearch on behalf of large customers. In 2014, the company decided to focus on Kibi with the mission of evolving Elasticsearch and Kibana into full data intelligence platform. They've also been partners with Cambridge Intelligence for just under a year now. So as I said, there's quite a few people who have joined today's presentation, and there's quite a range of expertise in there. So what I want to do now is just dial it back a bit before Giovanni's presentation and look at the elements behind this. So for some people, this is already going to be familiar. And to start off with, we want to look at what is a dashboard. So dashboards allow us to show a lot of information in a small space. So we can communicate data from a lot of data from different aspects in one page, for example. Well, what you'll notice here is, so we've done a Google search on on dashboards, and you'll see that all these images contain a lot of static charts. So pie charts, bar charts, and line charts, and text information, which is fairly static and looks at aggregated data. But sometimes we want to look at more the data in more detail in a dynamic way. And for that, we want to use graphs. So what am I talking about when I talk about graphs? Here we're looking at connected data. So we're looking at data that has connections, where the connections are just as important as the data that they are connecting. And here we're not looking at pie charts or bar charts. I'm looking at more like this connected diagram that you see here on this slide. And it's also sometimes called a network. So the network, you'll see nodes, which represent entities, and connections, which are represented by links, or also known as edges. So for example, these nodes could be people who are communicating with each other, or there could be people looking at financial transactions between people, or transactions between people and institutions, or between institutions. So if I was looking at financial transactions, I might be looking for fraudulent transactions, whereas if I was looking at people who are communicating, I might be looking at the social network aspect of it. Or I could be looking at something completely different, like an IT infrastructure, where the nodes are servers and users and PCs, mobile phones, routers, things like that, and I'd be looking at the communications, the information going across this network. And here I might be interested in someone trying to hack that network or bring that network down. I won't go into this into much detail. We did do this in a seminar last month by Corey Lannon, and that we've made available to you as well if you want to look at that in more detail. So now we've got all this connected data. Why do we actually want to visualize this? Well, until you visualize it, for a lot of people, this data is invisible, especially when you're looking at big data with a lot of data, and it's changing all the time. It's dynamically changing and adding and removing data to that information. So by visualizing it, we can put it in context, and also we can allow a much wider range of people to engage with that data, not just a few data experts. And by expanding this usage, you actually bring a lot more value into that data. So this could be expert analysts studying an entire network, looking for information such as vulnerabilities, through to investigators who may not be experts but still are just as interested in this data, and they might be looking at individual cases for fraudulent connections to those cases, for example. And as I said, making this, spreading this data out to a lot more people makes this data a lot more valuable to an organization. So now I'm going to hand over to Giovanni, who's going to present on Kibi, which is a highly configurable platform for data intelligence, taking that traditional platform dashboard that I just looked at and extending it to add this graph analytics and views using Siren Solutions enhancements together with KeyLines.
Hi, hello everyone, and thanks a lot, Sam, for the introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here. We at Siren Solutions are big fans of KeyLines, and I was like very happy to join you guys here to show what we've built with it. So I would like now to share my screen. Let's see if it how it's working. Just this should be this one. Okay. So I have a couple of slides to show, and then I'll jump immediately in the demo. So Kibi search-based data intelligence. In our introduction that you kindly gave, you said that we are search experts. We are a company based in Ireland, which has been around for more than 5 years. And we've been specialized in very high-end improvements to search engine technologies. A lot of services that you might be using today are powered by certain additions, certain improvements that we have pushed in the open source in Lucene, Solar, and Elasticsearch. So that was our core business. And then until about a year and a half ago, when we saw a humongous opportunity to actually push search engines to do data intelligence. And that's where the Kibi project started. So I'm going to give you a single technical slide because if I show you the demo first, you probably wouldn't care about this. So I do want to show it to you. So you might know that Elasticsearch is an amazing search engine. So what is a search engine? Traditionally, a search engine, something like Google, for example, was something where you just put text. But you know Google, it's amazingly scalable, amazingly fast, amazingly real-time. So the technology, which is called inverted index for those that are more keen, has this basic characteristic: hugely scalable, hugely fast, is usually tolerant. I mean, you can misspell stuff and it will still pop up. So that's where we are starting from. Elasticsearch is a completely open source, best in class search engine, right? And that's where we start. And of course, it has a user interface, which is called Kibana, and that's also open source. And it turns out that search engines are pretty good at doing a little bit of analytics. Actually, very nice analytics, not relational, but it gives you basic aggregates, which are super fast. Right? And that's what we did. And we started from extending this thanks to KeyLine and the graph analytics, and to our extensions called Siren, which stands for Semantic Information Retrieval Engine, and the Gremlin interface, which is a graph query language driver for Elasticsearch. You get Kibi, which is a combination of this technology plus a user interface. Now, what Kibi brings to the table is you go from a simple dashboard, which would be your traditional dashboard, right, to something which is relational, and it's graph. So you can do this operation, which we call set-to-set navigation. For example, going from places to transactions that took place in those places, to people and network of people that have been in those places or they are connected somehow. And at the basis of this incredible technology called the Siren join technology, which is hugely scalable and sits on top, allows the joins between the indexes and allows the joins on top of Elasticsearch. And I also put a solar logo down here because you never know what might happen in the future. And then, of course, Kibi then adds a lot of features on top of this. And this is kind of a roadmap of what's going to happen in the next few months, where you're going to see collaboration, alerting, predictive inferring, etc., which is things that you expect in a data intelligence platform once you have this incredible core capability. So without waiting any longer, I'll just simply go to the demo. So first thing, this is the demo. This is Kibi. For those of you that might have seen Kibana already, which is the open source interface from Elasticsearch, this looks vaguely familiar. It's a really nice interactive web-based dashboard system where you have a bunch of widgets that all together and everything is coordinated. So for example, let me say that I'm looking for, I don't know, Google as a keyword. I click here and everything filters down. You see Google, you see that it's mostly on ZDNet. Let me explain you the data a little bit, right? In this demo, this is a demo which ships with Kibi. You can download Kibi, which by the way is open source. You can just download it and it has this demo right in. So it's already loaded, you can play with it. Does not have the graph browser powered by KeyLines because that's in the enterprise edition only, but everything else you can just play with it. So this demo has been loaded with a data set composed of 4 main tables. We have articles taken from the web, 640,000, which are mentioning one or more companies, and the companies are 160,000. The companies might have received one or more investment rounds, and these are the investment rounds which are made by investors. And Kibi organizes information into tabs, which therefore, you want to take a look at the companies, you click here and you go to the companies tab, right? And then within a single tab, you can nest as many dashboards as you want. For example, this is an article view, but you might want to have another dashboard which shows some different aspect, and you can simply stack them one inside the other. But let me show you, for those that are familiar with Kibana, once again, this is the widgets are familiar. What's not familiar is this relational concept. So let me show you a little bit in the background what happens where you get the indexes from Kibana, and this is the typical Kibana Elasticsearch configuration, but this is the magic. It says that some of these fields are connected, and that's where the relational part comes into play, which is an absolute innovation by Kibi. These indexes, you can basically connect them together and say, look, we have an article index that uses the company field to connect to the company ID. And of course, this can be many-to-many, and sometimes can even form a network, like companies can have competitors, and therefore you have a connection from one dashboard to itself, as if it was a social network, friend of a friend, and so on, right? Once you've done this configuration, you're basically ready. I mean, Kibi now understands your data, understands how your data is relationally connected, right? So I'm going to start a little bit from the start and show you how, you can of course make a search and you can look for financial, for example, whatever. And this is a great search engine, so you immediately get the most relevant results, but everything filters down, everything is coordinated, right? Let's say that you want to, create a new widget or ask a question that is simply not visible here before. Then it's really, really simple to just create a new one. So I can go here. You have the standard Kibana components for those that know it, but then Kibi adds a bunch of new components which are really interesting. Let me create just a pie chart on articles, for example. I might simply want to split the slices and show you, who are the top companies which are mentioned in all our article. Here it is, 5 top companies which are mentioned. Maybe we're gonna make 8, why not? And you have them here. But then it also supports sub-aggregates really, really fast. I mean, we're talking huge data here. I mean, this works on tens of billion records if you have a cluster that's big enough, by the way. So it can be all sorts of operational logs, anything you can think of. So let me do a second aggregation and say, all right, once again, show me, for example, we had companies already. Why not talking about the source? Which means, which are the magazines that are talking about it. Here it is, ZDNet, TechCrunch, etc., etc. Let's say that you're happy with this widget and you want to use it in your dashboard. What you're going to do is you're going to call it Pi, for example, articles companies, right? I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go here in the dashboard, and I am going to simply add it, right? You can just simply Pi article companies, and as you do this, this appears down here. Here it is. You can, make it bigger, and it's all coordinated. So I can place it here. For example, now, I moved things, but I can press on anything, and anything reacts in a coordinated way. So it's both a visualizer and a filter. Okay. So this is the standard dashboarding thing. Let me just refresh here just a second. So I'm going to take away all these filters that I created here, and I'm going to show you the relational features, which are actually the most interesting. Now I got a little issue here. Let me just real quick, just reload it 1 second. There was this pop-up that wouldn't go away. All right, so we're back here, and let me look for something, for example, that talks about I don't know. So it could be life science. All right, so I have 11,000. Okay, I look for life and science, so the two things are disconnected. If I wanted life and science, of course, I could have just looked for life science. Here it is. So I have 158 articles, and I could say, could you please show me the companies that are connected to this? So you click here, and you basically go into the companies, and these are the companies that are mentioned in articles that mention life and science. So here you see the relational aspects, right? And you could say, how many investments have they received? In this case, in my database, I have 33 investments. And then who are the investors? You just click here and go and see who are the investors. And at any time, the filters are relationally stacked, and you can see it back. These are just the investors that have made an investment in a company which has then been mentioned in an article which mentioned the word life and science. You can also, if you want, pull up the schema directly from here, and that's very interesting. So if you look at the numbers up here, you have 600,000 articles and 160,000 companies. But you can say things like, show me only the articles that mention the companies that I have here, and show me only companies which are mentioned in at least one articles. So you can actually enforce this. And here you go. The articles went down and the companies went down, right? And you can then go on and say, well, I'm only interested in companies if they've received at least one of the investments, and everything, reduces once again by one of the investors that I have in my list. And at this point, everything is coordinated. So these are now relationally linked with one another. So if I, for example, choose something like, Canadian investors, or let me today, it's KeyLines, so let me look for English investors. There they are. Right, so at this point, exactly that they made 255 investment rounds in 191 companies, and totaling 1,700 articles. So I could click here on articles, and immediately at a glance, I could see what are the keyword. Is the adapt mobile. Of course, forget about the keywords that don't really mean very much, but you can actually see certain keywords which are related to investments by these people. Or at the same time, I could have just put another keyword here, and it would just simply filter everything down the road. All right, so I showed you the relational capabilities of Kibi, but now I'm going to show you, how we use the keyline to answer questions that we wouldn't be able to answer even with this technology. So just to recap a second, what I've shown you is the power of one of the best search engines in the world, where you can search just a keyword anywhere and find any documents, and the keyword can be misspelled, it can be, it's a search engine, it can be as tolerant as you want. Then I show you analytics, like it would be BI, business intelligence, where you can create widgets as you wish. I show you relational set-to-set navigation, which is something completely new and enormously powerful. Right? And now I'm going to show you how the graph gets into the picture. Sometimes there are questions that you cannot just answer with all this, like which one of these guys tend to work together, right? Which one of them collaborate, right? And this is a typical question that you answer with a graph analytics. So of course I can click on a single one, because in Kibi you can just select something, and I can go to the graph browser and I can start browsing it, right? So I can start browsing it directly, right? And for example, navigate what are the investment that this guy has made. And that's interesting. It could be interesting. You can see there is an article and then there is another investment made by somebody else. And that's, you know, standard navigation. But some of the most interesting thing is when you're actually at large scale. So these are just investors, which are English, which have made investments in companies which have been receiving press coverage. So these are kind of the successful investments, right? So let me actually add all these investors all together at the same time. Here they are. So I can organize this and I can see all these investors at the same time, and I can see the number of investment they made. Like, for example, Pentech Venture has made 24, while Python Capital has made 2, etc., etc. This is very old data, by the way, so don't really consider this as correct data, right? So, but to answer the question, have they been working together? Well, the next thing I want to do is definitely add those successful investments, right? So not all the investments that they've made, I could do that if I wanted, but just the successful ones. So let me add just this 255 here. So as I do this, you know, the system fetches and you know, gets the connections. I can reorganize the graph here, and something really interesting appears. So I can zoom in and I can see that, for example, Pentacapital has okay, or whatever else, Castrol Innoventure has made 1 investment, but it was a good one because it was, you know, 1 out of 1 actually led to a company which was then published in an article. There are others which have not been so lucky. I mean, this guy has made 17 investments, but only 4 are the ones that are, you know, leading to companies which have been published, and that's particularly interesting. And but let me actually add the companies. So by doing this and adding the companies to the picture, I'm actually going to see if any of these guys are actually working together. So give it a sec as all the graph is explored, and we are ready to go, because as I asked to reorganize the graph, then the patterns are immediately appearing. You start seeing investors that work together based on certain companies, right? And you can see that there are certain guys that are not working together at all. They're all separated on the side. And, you know, we have a big investor here, so we can see who he is, and that's Balderton Capital for you, very famous VC. So you can, of course, reorganize this in a way that KeyLine allows, and you can see that he has been cooperating. They have been cooperating with several other investors. You can see them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. But another thing I'm going to do is you can run certain scripts and certain possibilities. For example, in this case, I'm going to select all the investors and I'm going to put them hierarchically. And by doing that, it's very interesting because KeyLine basically puts on the same line those that have to be connected. That's a very smart feature. So what I can do is, because it did this, I can just eliminate the guys that don't seem to work with each other very much. And I can immediately clear my graph up in a very efficient way. And then when I am going to organize it again as before, the patterns are actually easier to read. I mean, I can see much better and much clearer the things. Of course, I can do graph transformations. For example, you know, this is a nice little icon, but I want to replace it with an arrow which is proportional to the amount of money that these guys have been receiving. So here is just an example script. You're right. So maybe I have a little issue here. So maybe I'll just allow me to reload it. Of course, I tried it a billion times, and now I'm just reloading it. Yeah. So now because I reloaded, now I going to quickly load my guys again into the demo. And just get the Canadians this time. And so I'm going to pull them together. So we put them investors, the investments, and the companies, for example. right? So this is my data set again, and typically if, all right, so now it all works. And this is pretty cool because basically I run a script that converted the graph in a way to show me which one are the big investments, right, versus the small investments, because now you can immediately see the big investments, because they have a big arrow, etc. But everything, can be configured and so on. So last thing I want to show you, and then I'm going to hand it back, is the fact that, this is a two-way. It's a round trip. So once I've found, for example, this group of people, they're working together, all these investments, by the same group of investors, and I'm interested in this, guys, I can go back to the previous paradigm. So I can say, well, create a filter and let me see exactly who these guys are. And that's it. I created a filter, and now I've selected 20 entities, and 16 of these are companies and 4 are investors, right? So maybe I'm interested in knowing what these companies do, and maybe there is a pattern right there. So I go here, and I can see, for example, that these companies are all in Canada, which makes sense because these guys were Canadian. And yeah, so basically I'm back to the original paradigm where I can browse the dashboard and relationally do so as I need, right? So yeah, that's approximately what I wanted to show. Of course, there's many more things that you can do in Kibi. For example, you can go and take a look at the graph analytics, at the timeline capabilities, see, for example, how certain companies, this is one specific company called Songbird, have received certain investments over time, has received certain articles, and you can, of course, then go back to the graph analytics and so on. There are other features such as direct database integrations, which is very, very handy. Taxonomical data support that is coming very soon. But I think you get the idea. So thank you very much for looking into this, and I look forward to the questions or whatever. Once again, just let me remind you that you can download the Kibi open source edition from our website.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Giovanni. That was a very interesting presentation. What I wanted to cover just before we go into the Q&A is just the background of this is the KeyLines toolkit, which was being used in Kibi. And so KeyLines is a powerful SDK for graph data visualization. And by this I mean it's a toolkit which you can embed into your web application, and you will need some JavaScript resources and skills to be able to connect the SDK just to connect it to your database and configure the look and feel. KeyLines then handles all the visualization and analysis that you want to do on the network, and can handle the interactions with it, so clicking, right-clicking, dragging, and zooming, and things like that. You just need to tell it which functions to call when people interact with the network. On the back end, it's fully compatible with most frameworks and databases that are available today, and those can be SQL or non-relational databases. And on the front end, it works with pretty much every browser and operating system available today. And that includes tablets, so it can handle touch interface interactions as well. As developers, we've designed it to be easy to use and fully customizable, so it's very quick to develop a very powerful visualization to include in your application, and to look exactly like your application or however you want to look with that. So if you have any questions on KeyLines, please feel free to contact me after this, and obviously you can contact Giovanni on Kibi after this. But first, we do have some questions that people have been asking during the presentation before that we'll look into now. And feel free, if we have time, we'll keep asking them, and we'll look into them now. Okay. So to start off with, we have a question from Graham. What is the difference between Kibi and the Elasticsearch Graph API? So you're on, Giovanni, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, sure. This is a question we're getting because Elasticsearch some time ago announced a graph, some form of graph API. The graph API by Elasticsearch is extremely interesting. So let me tell you that, but it's not a graph. So it might look like a graph, but what it is effectively It's a way to show you how certain values in your indexes might be connected with each other, which is very interesting indeed. So they're showing this as a graph. So they have a little visualization, which is part of their premium offering. Actually, you have to have a platinum subscription, if I'm not wrong, but don't quote me on this. It's part of their premium subscription, and they have a little graph visualization. You can see, for example, in this demo, if you install it, you can actually install it on top of Kibi, and it works. So you can actually have the Elastic graph and the Kibi graph at the same time. You would be able to see that 2006 is particularly related with a certain kind of investment. It could be round A or round B, because they statistically co-occur. And that's interesting. But that's obviously nothing to do with an intelligence graph, like, for example, who said what, when, who met these people, what. And this is just relational, typical graph knowledge that you have to do, jumping thousands or millions or billions of records. And that's what Kibi does, and is visualized by KeyLines. So the two things are very different. They're beautifully complementary, and you can have them at the same time. No problem.
Great, thank you. Another question from Sue. Is there a graph database on the back end of Kibi, like Titan?
That's very interesting. The answer is no. Kibi implements a fully featured Gremlin API. I haven't shown this in the demo. I probably should have, but you can do shortest path between two nodes, and that shortest path is not executed in the browser. It's really executed in the backend. So it could be billion of records, and that is executed in Gremlin, which is a graph query language. So what we did to do this is we implemented a full Tinkerpop tree Gremlin API that therefore can accept queries such as graph traversal and finding the shortest path exactly as if it was a graph database, but it is on Elasticsearch. Therefore, you don't need a graph database. You just load the data into Elasticsearch. Of course, that doesn't mean that you could not also use in a graph database, because, of course, that would have tremendously better performance on certain kind of queries. So it could be possible to actually put it together, but it's not required.
Okay, thank you. So another question I'll answer first and then send over to you. Anthony is asking, is KeyLines free and is Kibi free? So to answer KeyLines part of it, it's a commercial product. And if you want to discuss it, we're happy to discuss the commercial aspects of KeyLines and set up an evaluation if that's of interest as well. And then Giovanni, do you want to answer, is Kibi free?
Well, the Kibi and the Kibi Community Edition is freely available, but does not have the keyline visualization and does not have a lot of other things: taxonomical data support, support for access control, support for object control very soon out. It doesn't have. In general, you don't get the premium enterprise support that you need, certain premium deployment options, and some visualizations. So that's the free version for you, but it's used by a lot of people out there for operations or whatever. The premium edition, which is the Kibi Enterprise Edition, features everything else, graph analytics, etc. And that wouldn't be free, no. It's on subscription.
Okay. Another question from Sue. Can Kibi be white labeled?
Well, yes. In the short version is yes. So more than white label. White label is not a proper term. It can be OEM'd. So you can customize it for a specific vertical. And we're very happy, to embed it in some other. There's a lot of partners that are looking into embedding capabilities of Kibi or actually Kibi itself. So we're very happy with partnering with people over Kibi, of course.
Right, thank you. And a question now from Fausto. How does Kibi scale when indices to be joined have millions of documents?
I I cannot show it here because that contains kind of data which is fine in a private demo, but not in a public. But I have a demo with 50 million people and 7 million companies, and it's just joining back and forth, and it's beautiful, very snappy. So there are some limits, so it's not like it's not limited at all. So the enterprise edition allows you to control these limits to the point that when I mean, it doesn't matter if one of the indexes has 100 billion records, that's not a problem, as long as the intersection set is not more than, say, it's about 5 million entities per shard. So, you know, you can put many more computers and the join become more scalable, but it has certain limitations. But in the Enterprise Edition, you can control those limitations, and you can basically put certain cuts. And whenever you try to do something exaggerated, it will just cut, and you get a little asterisk indicating that if you filter down, you get the exact numbers, but if you don't filter, you get an approximate number or you get a limited number. That's how it works. And with Kibi 5, the expectation is to push these limits, one or more orders of magnitudes up, because there's a completely new technology. So it's very scalable at the moment, but our objective is to make it even more.
Okay, thanks. That's very impressive. Similar to that, we have a question from Michael for KeyLines, and that's how much data can KeyLines handle? So basically, I mean, KeyLines doesn't have any hard limit on data. It's limited basically by the hardware it's running on, say the browser and the network and the server. But on the front end, KeyLines can handle as much data as the browser can take. And then performance-wise on interaction, it depends on, you can have a few thousand nodes quite easily on the screen at once and interact with those. If you go above that, we've now implemented the WebGL interface, which can do many thousands of nodes quite easily. But at this point, you also want to consider how much data you want to look at once and still be able to see something. So you want to incorporate things like expanding the database as you go along, or filtering down or grouping a lot of nodes into sort of common groupings, which allows you to sort of look at a lot more data in context. Okay, so the next question from Sue again. Can KeyLines connect to Titan? And that's, yeah, KeyLines is fully compatible, so it can connect to Titan. Connect to most databases. You just need to get that data into a very simple JSON format, which can be fed into KeyLines. So pretty much most databases out there can be connected to KeyLines. And another question we have from Fausto again, for you, Giovanni. How does Kibi implement joins of Elasticsearch indices?
The technology is quite sophisticated, and it uses a plugin which is called Siren Join. The plugin in this version, you can download it, and it's even open source. So you can actually use it. You install it on your cluster, and the plugin handles the coordination and orchestration of the nodes in order to exchange identifiers in very compressed and various techniques and be able to do the join. So the joins for backend are inside the Elasticsearch cluster thanks to the Siren Join plugin.
That's great. So we have no more questions at the moment. If you do have any more questions after this, please feel free to contact us, and that's me at KeyLines or Giovanni. Thank you very much, Giovanni, for joining us and for an excellent presentation. It was very interesting to see. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our webinar.
Thanks a lot, everyone.